good afternoon. It's Thursday. Yes, I did a little intro video for this week and I'm pretty pleased with how it looked. So you can let me know what you think in the comments. We are live today on Facebook, on Twitter and on YouTube, Carly, just in case you didn't realize that. So today we are talking education, and my guest, who I know a long time, Carly Bailey, is going to share her story as to what education can really do for you and what brought her to that point as to why, as an adult and a mature student, she decided to go back. Carly, thank you so much for coming on today. How are you, first of all?
Well, I think like everybody else, I'm grand.
How's
really
the
grand,
schooling going?
Right.
Because you have smallies in the house.
I do. I have a 9 and a 10-year-old who are currently making some sort of a shoebox house project for school at the moment. I'm hoping they're not going to come barging in any second. So apologies if they do.
No worries. It'll be your kids or my dog. So we have a choice as to what could happen when we are on live. Okay, education. Carly, what brought you to the point of deciding, yeah, do you know what? This is what I'm going to do now.
Well, I suppose probably even before ever I went back, I would have always have wanted to go back into education. Like I always kind of was very jealous of anybody who had a degree. I liked the idea of that, and I didn't even know what that would mean or what that would look like. And I was just always felt like I didn't have what other people had, and I would have loved to have had that opportunity to go back to college. But obviously, you know yourself, generally speaking, you feel like, well, I'm in the big bad world now, and I have a house, and I have a mortgage, and I have bills to pay, and I have children to feed, and all the rest of it. So that really wasn't on the agenda for us at that point. We both had to work, and then of course we had our lovely recession and property crash and world credit crash, whatever, all that sort of catastrophe happened back in 2008, which impacted so many of us, and our family included. So unfortunately, we both lost sort of hours in work, and then redundancies and trying to find work, and it was kind of getting a bit here and a bit there, really falling behind in our bills, in our mortgage, and 2 babies to kind of try and keep clothed and fed and all the rest, and really struggled, and kind of just got to a point where it got too much, unfortunately, and we lost our family home. So we were essentially homeless at that point, and that was obviously devastating, and really just, I suppose, was a chance at that point to sort of think, well, what now, what next? We were pretty broken, the pair of us. My husband hadn't sort of third level education any more than I did either. So I suppose what we kind of noticed was at that sort of very vulnerable time that those people who were managing to kind of keep afloat, I guess, did also seem to have like third level education qualifications in behind them. They had sort of, I suppose, what you would consider some more professional roles, higher paid kind of positions, safer jobs. We were working in sort of like tourism and hospitality and construction, indirectly and stuff like that. So all the types of things that were really badly impacted as soon as the recession came. Not unlike what we're seeing currently, as we can see, there's quite a big similarity there. So yeah, we moved into rented accommodation. We were just, I was very sure that I didn't ever want to be back in this position ever again, and so the two of us decided at that point we'd look into going back to college and just see what could we do, try and get something done quickly to try and get back into the workforce. I think that was the ultimate initial kind of aim out of it. My partner, Brian, my husband, had already been back in college a couple of times while he was unemployed first, which was very difficult. Like, we were living in rural Ireland, and it was like over an hour and a half to the nearest sort of college where he was going, and he had to travel over and back, and it was costing us a lot of money. It's like this. It's sort of like, so why don't you just go back to college? And it's easier said than done. Never mind fees, but there's also the cost of going to college and education. Your books and your laptops and your petrol costs if you're going by car, and all of those extras that they really can add up.
And as you say that, actually, I'm just thinking, because when you think back to 2008, 2009, access to online to college online
wasn't
what it is now.
No. I mean, even now, it's still sketchy enough, you know. I think there will be a good change in that over the next couple of years with what's happened with sort of remote working, remote learning has kind of, you know, forced everybody into having to change practices. But really, no, there wasn't anything like that at the time. And even now, a lot of the time, if you're unemployed and looking to go back, they'll only help you out in terms of, say, like a back to education allowance if you're willing to go back into it full time, which for a lot of parents is very, very difficult to do, hugely difficult to do. And it's a big commitment and all of that. I suppose we'd lost everything and we didn't really have anything to lose at that point. So
Yeah.
it was, I suppose, a little bit easier, if you can call it that, from that point of view. So that's what we did. I suppose I dipped my toe because I felt very very wary of it because I wanted to do it. I would have loved to, but I was very sure that I wouldn't be very good at it, that I didn't have the confidence to go back in. And so I started out with a level 5 course in Liberties College here in Dublin, in applied social studies. Because it seemed something, an area that I was just sort of quite interested in. I thought, well, look, if I last a month, maybe we'll see from there, kind of thing, you know. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So I was doing that, and my husband was in college then. At that stage, he'd gone to IT Tala. It's now university. So he was studying there in the evening time. So we were kind of just sort of high-fiving with two very small children.
And I was just thinking that, because so it was basically one of you by day and one of you by night.
Mm-hmm.
And managing, you're now in rented accommodation and you've the two children there, and you're kind of just literally ships passing, coming in the door in the evening.
It was really the only way we could work it, that we could do it together. And I mean, look, it was a tough couple of years while he was at it, and we were both at it. You know, definitely. You know, we didn't see very much of each other. Plus, obviously, we had all the other extras. You know, your assignments and essays and all of these things, projects to kind of get done or whatever. So yeah, like, I mean, it was a tough good few years, you know. But at the same time, like, I don't have any regrets of it. You know, it's worked out for us both, really. You know.
So when, like, I'm actually just trying to picture that conversation at the start of the process, where you kind of say, well, like, do you draw straws? Well, who's by day and who's by night, and how, you know, how you manage all the other daily living things with having a family, you know, how that conversation went. I just trying to get my head into that.
It's interesting because, like, I think about this a lot now, because obviously, let alone the education piece, there was obviously kind of a bit of a role reversal went on then in terms of childcare and things like that. So, you know, I'm obviously quite a strong feminist and all the rest of it, but I don't know if I would have been so much back then. I hadn't really, like, I was, but it wasn't really sort of a conscious thing that I was thinking about an awful lot. And I don't think there really ever was a conversation. I'm just very fortunate that I'm married to a man who doesn't believe that he ought to have the right of way on everything. You know, we've always had a very sort of equal relationship in that regard. And I suppose he'd started out his educational journey before I had, when we were still living in our home that we had built and owned, before we lost that. So I suppose he'd had the first shot at it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So then it was like, almost like, well, now's your turn. So then it was like, right, well, I get to go do this bit. But like, as it happened, we both just inquired, and the course he was interested in was also available during the evening time. So it sort of, in a way, kind of fell into place or whatever. So, you know, that's just kind of how it worked. And at the time we had a family member who lived nearby, and, you know, she was great those first few years as well in helping us out where there was crossover, because sometimes, like, we'd end up having like exams the same day and things like that, you know. That kind of is all, it could get very stressful. And of course, because we were on a very low income at that point, very low income, we didn't have enough to pay for extra childcare, and that, like, you know, it was very limited what we could do. So we just had to make it work, and we did. And like, that sort of, that role reversal thing, I suppose it's never really, like, well, it's changing as much as we just do it equal shares. So now that we're both working, we just figure it out, that kind of way. So in a way, it's been good for the family. The kids got to know their dad so much more than they might have done previously. So it was one advantage of it, in the way it worked
Yeah,
out.
and actually funny you say that on that role reversal, because this actually came up in conversation on my interview last week with a psychotherapist, and we were talking about men's mental health and how and generationally some men will have difficulty with staying at home, but you are absolutely blessed in that, because you two are so equal, that it was, yeah, sure, I'll be here by day and study by night, your husband. Yep. And you say, oh, that's grand. So,
Yeah, well, it was, and it was like, I mean, we felt like that, but I mean, I won't lie. There was definitely, we felt that society was judging us. Like, he would bring our little fella to a toddler group while our little lassie was at play school, for example. It was only on once a week, but he would get really strange looks, like really, really odd looks. And, it was, stuff like that was very disappointing, because I mean, it's not that long ago. It's 10 years or whatever it is at this stage. Not even 10 years ago at this point. So, there definitely was, but like, I've definitely noticed this, like, it's definitely been a huge shift, even in that sort of 8 years or so. There's so many more dads coming to school pickups and stuff now, and granddads I've seen out with prams that are minding kids, and
which is great.
It's amazing. It's wonderful to see it. Like, there's definitely seems to have been just a little bit more of a step up in terms of, like, we all have to give a dig out, and we all are mad about these kids, like, so why would we not, like, and it's lovely to have to be fortunate enough, I suppose, to have been in so many, like, I had as a student, I would have had, I suppose, more time to spend with them than if I was working, say, a 9-to-5 job, for example. And similarly with himself. So, like, in a way, like, it was hard and it was a lot of high-fiving, but we also got to spend a lot of good time with our kids when they were younger. So I suppose I take a lot from that. Like, it's always been something I have no regrets over,
Yeah, and actually, just as you say that, there is a comment in on that at the moment. It's sad that it's still happening in places now where the man gets funny looks, or if they're babysitting their own kids. And I have to say, like, I know my guys are an awful lot older than your own. Yeah, that term, babysitting your own kids, you're kind of going, no. But if we move on, that so that you gave yourself kind of, well, if I get through a month, if I get through 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever, you got through that first year then in that course.
I did.
And then you went.
Well, so then I was encouraged massively by the tutors at that college. They were brilliant. They were like, I mean, I couldn't recommend further education and PLC courses more. Like, a lot of people are very snobby about them and they look down their noses at them, but I actually think it was amazing. It gave us a really great return into it. They still kind of very much hold your hand, but like, it's an introduction back into the whole thing again. And I would thoroughly recommend it to anybody if they're not sure, if they just want to try it out first in advance. They're great. It's a wonderful experience. So they were very encouraging. And so I suppose, like I was saying earlier, the CAO was up and like, I had my applications in, and I had wanted to go and do social work, and Trinity was the obvious place to do that, because there was only Trinity and I think Cork at the time, and we were living in Dublin, so Trinity was the obvious one. But I mean, I had it, but I was still like, Trinity College, like, I wouldn't, that's bizarre. But anyway, like, we'll put it down and we'll see how we go. And I didn't get my first, second or third offer on my CAO, and I think probably we're going to start to see an increase. I think you were saying earlier, there's an increase now in
yeah, and I mean, this like, having you on was discussed a few weeks back, and then the stats came out about the CAO there. I think it was about 10 days ago, and this year, obviously, because of everything, the applications have shot up.
And obviously, with everybody, there's so many people out of work. So many people have, I suppose, last year gave everybody a big opportunity to really sort of sit back and sort of review their life and figure out, like, is this actually what I want to do? Like, should I try something else? Maybe now's the time. And, they always sort of say that this can be a chance to really just sort of change train tracks, and that certainly was the case with us, and I would encourage anybody who's thinking about it definitely to go for it. But like, I mean, there was huge competition because so many people were kind of in similar situations, and so I didn't get offered my first, second or third choice, And I had the opportunity to go for my fourth one, which would have been a 3-year degree. Or I was also offered, and I had applied for the Trinity Access program, which is like sort of a level 6 course, but it's like a step into the degree programs in Trinity. And I was trying to weigh it up, like, that's doing a year in Trinity at an access course and then a 4-year degree at Trinity. That's 5 years versus a 3-year degree. And I was really trying to figure out, what should I do, what should I not do? And I suppose we were talking about, that would have been 2014, 15, I think, at that stage. So things were still pretty grim. So in the end, I decided I'd go for Trinity and just see what that would bring me. I don't know if I possibly do that now. Things like age and all the rest of it come into play. At that, they really do.
Look who you're talking to.
But they do, though. We all think about these things. Like, I suppose if you're going back because you just want to go back and enjoy it, that's a very different thing to, I need to go back and do this as quickly as possible because I need to earn some money and I need to get us back up that kind of way. Like, so, but like, I mean, I've no regrets, and I think everybody has to make their own choices in and around that, and there've been no right or wrong on that. So I decided to do the Access program, and I'm really grateful that I did. It was really just a door opener into a whole other world, really. It was amazing. It was a brilliant experience.
So you're standing there in Trinity College?
Not quite. You go to a school outside of the grounds for the Access program, and we talk about big school. So we go to big school, we visit big school, like you go to the library, you'd have the access to the printers and that kind of stuff, but you don't go to any lectures or anything like that. So you're outside of it. So again, it's still kind of a bit of hand holding. It's trying to get you ready. But by the time then I did graduate, and it's a competitive process again, similarly to the further education or PLC courses, there's a certain amount on every course, or ring fence for that, a certain amount of places. Similarly with the Access program, there's a certain number of places for those, and there's a certain number of places for mature students on every course at Trinity, and I imagine all of the other colleges and that. So it was a competitive process. I did well. I was really delighted and that. So I got the course. I decided I changed my mind over social work, and I got accepted to law and political science at Trinity. So then I got to go in the gates.
Okay, so I'm kind of picturing you there, and we all know what the front of Trinity looks like, and that beautiful arch and those beautiful wooden doors.
So that's the mad thing, Barbara, because I didn't. Most people have never even been inside it. I didn't know you could go in. I didn't know, like, so you see it with
I could say something here, but but I'd actually get into trouble.
Okay, fair enough.
You're not from Dublin then. You're not from Dublin. No. So, but you're standing there. Now, when you got in, I'm just wondering, your thought process there at that moment, you are now there in Trinity. Did you think back on the few years previous going, hang on a second, this time 3 years ago, myself, my husband were going, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
And like, look at me, I'm standing here with this on front of me.
It was a huge moment. And in a large way, though, again, I suppose the confidence issues come into play, that imposter syndrome that we all suffer from, no matter what our circumstances, whether it's in our careers or whatever, that very much came into play. Like, I sort of was beginning to feel like I'm only here because they felt sorry for me, or because I'm poor, or, there's lots of things, or I don't deserve to be here. Like, I'm in the same course as somebody who needed to get like 590 points in their leaving cert. This is bananas, like, and all the rest of it. And I think it was really only after the first year when I actually, did my exams and all my essays and assignments, same as everybody else, and I did well, that I was like, oh, okay, all right, grant. Now I'm starting to feel like, right.
So and imposter syndrome is something we covered here, but it took you all that time to, when you got your results, to say, no, do you know what, guys, actually I have a right to be here.
All right. Yeah. Now, I think that's probably partly to do with the fact that I was in such a prestigious place. I think that probably played a massive part, because I suppose I've been used to Liberties College, and I've been used to Brian being at IT Tala, like, places where I felt comfortable. I felt like I was with my own kind, and like that's, it's a huge chip on our shoulders, but it's a real thing too. There is a huge number of very privately educated people who attend Trinity College, particularly in the law school, you know, that there'd be, you
Yes.
know, there's definitely, you know, I was a very different kind of a student compared to most in the class, you know, that kind of way. But they were lovely. They were always really welcoming. They were all very sound and always made me feel very much part of the gang and all the rest of it. So, yeah, I think there's that. But like, you know, you're still dealing with, I've got my kids, like my very first day of college, like, so I'd walked through the gates and I'd gone through the long way and I'd gone through the front arch out into the square, and it was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I was queuing up to get a locker. And it's this big, massive queue. I think they've changed it. It's all online now. But at the time, you had to queue up or whatever. And I got a phone call from my daughter's hospital. She'd been there for a couple of weeks before that to bring her rush her straight in. She needed a cardiology checkup because she'd had this horrible thing that they kind of missed it out on. So I had to leave. My first day of university, I had to leave. I had to go and bring my girl back to hospital. Thankfully, she was all okay. Everything checked out. But it really kind of hammered home, I'm a mammy. You know, my first port of call always is going to be my kids. And I suppose it always felt a little bit unsteady. It never felt like this was always going to last. So I kind of just tried to make it last.
So it was very much, each day that I'm here is going to be
another one.
Is another one.
So it was kind of hard to look back, and it was hard to look forward to, because we were still sort of just felt quite precarious, I guess, in that regard. Yeah, always unclear as to whether, say for example, like I was getting back to education allowance, they were kind of changing the goalposts a little bit a lot of the time, and it was always unclear. Oh, am I going to be able to get it in September? Or can I work in the summer? And it was all over the place. So, you know, it's not easy. I won't sit here and go like, you know, going back is it's grand, and it's not about, like, it can be difficult and there can be challenges. But what I would suggest 100% is that you would like, the colleges, every college and every university will always have tutors, and they'll have supports, and they'll have lots of different things in place. Use them. I mean, I can't begin to describe how much support I had to get over the few years. Like in my third year, of college, we were made homeless again from our private rented accommodation. The landlord needed the house back. We couldn't find anything, so we were homeless for a number of months. I had to defer exams. I nearly didn't get into my last year, and I would have had to repeat it. In other words, then I would have had to leave because I couldn't afford to pay the fees for a repeat year. And my college, they moved like heaven and earth to make things work out, and to help me be able to sit the exams I needed to do. And it was very stressful, but I mean, I can't get over how much support they gave me to make sure that I did that. And then I got into my final year, and it was like, oh wow. And I really tried to enjoy that last year, because you know, I knew that was it then. You know, it was kind of like, I had to try and get this done. And you know, it was great. It was
and there's a very interesting question actually after coming in on that, on what you were saying.
Mum guilt. Oh yes, yeah, hugely. However, I turned it into parent guilt.
Yes.
I think sort of a lot of the political studies I was doing at that stage, I was reading a lot of feminist work and all that kind of thing. So yes, I did hugely. I think there's no mum in the world who would never not, but I also made sure that that was spread evenly, because if you carry that with you, and if you're the only one who holds that, inevitably you'll end up dropping out, or you know, you won't give your best work. Or now, I don't think you can ever give your best work when you've got, you know, especially young kids and you're trying whatever, but like, you know, you do your best with what you can. And I was always happy with that. Like, I'm quite sure I would have graduated with a first if I didn't have children, for example. I got a 2-1. I'm damn proud of that. Do you know what I mean? That's fine. That's great.
Is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and I know, having gone back to college when I was 41, I think I was in around my early 40s. I know like what it's like, and I know about that drive back and forth and trying to get in and out of college. And I was rural, you know, you had buses. That was thankfully you had a bus that you could actually get into town. So I know exactly. And then you thought, well, at the end of that year, you get your degree. And what's the actual degree in?
So it's in laws and political science. So it's a joint degree.
And you said a moment ago, that's it, that's grand, I'll have my degree. But both you and your husband in those last couple of years decided, nah, will we go on and do another bit?
Well, I suppose, thankfully, Brian also graduated with a degree in business from IT Cllr. I think it was 2016. So that was great. And I suppose I had run for the local elections in my final year as well. So I was trying to do my finals, my exams, and Canvas. That was fun. Yeah, that was not fun at all. But I threw that little challenge in for myself just for the crack, just for kicks and giggles. But yeah, look, I managed to finish up and then be able to kind of throw myself into the local elections and the rest of it. So that was great. And yeah, I was successful and was elected in May not last year, 2019. I keep thinking last year is 2019.
I was going, no, it wasn't 2020. And I was going back on the posts and all that and on social. I said, gosh, it was 2019. Like 2020 has
almost
just
2 years. Yeah. 2020 is not linear. It's neither long nor short. I don't know what it is. It's one of those anomaly years, I think. Yeah, or annus horribilis, or whatever you want to call it.
So 2019, then after getting your degree, you get elected to the Social Democrats, and you were a councillor for the Social Democrats. Is it Dublin Southwest?
South Dublin County Council.
South Dublin County Council.
Yeah. So I suppose the local electoral area that I represent it's called Rathfarnham Templeogue, but I live in the Dublin 12 end of it. Represent.
And then this year, you achieved something else.
Yes. Well, end of last year, I suppose I just decided to be a glutton for punishment. I suppose it was one of these things, though. I was kind of fortunate because, in a weird way, we were on such a low income. I was actually eligible for a special grant, Susie grant, which would basically cover my fees. So I applied for a master's in equality studies in UCD. I didn't actually think I'd get that, to be honest, and I didn't really know if I wanted to do that, and I didn't know if I could do that, but I got it and I was accepted and I was offered the course. I had been elected in the May and it was starting in September, October time. But a council's job essentially is part-time. I mean, that it's supposed to be a part-time thing. So I sort of felt like, well, I probably can make this work. And to be fair, the first couple of months I was making it work and I was loving the two. I was able to juggle it. It wasn't too bad because a lot of the masters tend to be evenings, and they tend to work with people who are working, if you know what I mean. So even though they're technically full time, but so that was fine. But I just didn't have a great start into it. Then my dad got very sick. He ended up having to have a quadruple bypass, and yeah, it was a very tough time for a few months. And I suppose I was trying to juggle everything and I couldn't, so the college work kind of got put to the side. But again, I just say to anybody, no matter what, that was UCD, it was a different institution at that stage, did everything they could to make it work for me, that I didn't have to drop out. They helped me, put things off. They deferred things for me. I was able to then spend my Christmas of 2019 just catching up on all of the previous semester's work. So I only got a day or two off over Christmas, but I managed to get all caught up, and that was great. And then of course we then head into COVID. So, sorry, missed a bit. A general election.
Oh yeah, general election. That's right.
So yes, I was running for the generals for Dublin Southwest. So that sort of kind of got in the way of the college work again for that sort of it was a quick campaign, 3-4 weeks. And then from there, it was a couple of weeks sort of reprise and back to college, and then COVID hit. And then the workload for any elected rep suddenly went from being sort of, between 15 and 25 hours a week to it was off the scale. I've never encountered anything like it in any work that I've ever done, and completely understandable. And I was also volunteering at our local COVID test centre that had sprung up at Tallaght Stadium as well, just couldn't get volunteers, and we didn't know very much about the virus and things at that stage.
But when you think of it now, and what you said today, so you are now a councillor on Dublin
South Dublin,
South
County Council.
South Dublin County Council. And you look at where you are now, because your story started with, we'd lost our jobs, we'd lost our home, we had 2 kiddies, rented, lost our home again. And in all that time, you're studying and, really getting it up. And the reason why, as we're coming to the end, and I didn't mention this at the beginning of the interview because I just wanted to let it play through. And how I know so much about Carly's story, and why I asked Carly, would you come on to talk about how important education is and what it can do for you, is because Carly is my sister-in-law, and she is married to my brother. So, and I'm trying not to get upset because it is an amazing story. I mean, it is absolutely one of, yeah, you are tough, Carly. You are, and just to see how you have come through to do what you two are doing now is just amazing. And it is really, it just inspires so many to say, do you know what? There is hope. There is something that, we can do. We can. Yes, it's hard and it's difficult, but for what you have, yes,
100% possible. And I'd like to hope for most people's journeys, it wouldn't be quite as dramatic either. Like, we definitely seem to have had a roller coaster, which I don't know if everybody would always have such a roller coaster. But I suppose, yeah, like, I mean, I'll be honest, I've seen people who haven't made it all the way to, it can be difficult, but I do feel that a lot of the time that was because they didn't maybe always reach out for supports. In some cases, the support just wasn't there that they needed, and that's okay too. But, I suppose if you're thinking about it, I think a lot of the time the things that stop you, you kind of think about, well, what if this happens? And what if that happens? And what about this? And what about, it's like, you just kind of have to take a bit of a leap, which is scary. But yeah, I would recommend it,
Yeah. So my last question then on this is for yourself and Brian. What did you discover about yourself that maybe you didn't realize 10 years ago?
I can't really speak for Brian, but yeah, I think I've learned I have sort of a resilience level that I didn't necessarily think. And again, that's not to say that I had no issues with my mental health. Won't lie, I've been on antidepressants on and off for years, like so many others. I'm not in any ways embarrassed by that at all. They've been very helpful. I have managed to engage in counselling. That's been hugely helpful. But I suppose it's recognizing that there's nobody is 100%, and there's nobody can get through absolutely everything without help and support. And I suppose that's what I'm trying to say. You can get through things provided you reach out for that help and support. You can't do it alone.
Yeah, and that's what we were saying last week, myself and Mary, when we were chatting, is that the reason that we have professionals that do what they do is because they are actually there for you.
Absolutely. Now, if the state would get on with helping people access those supports, we'd be an awful lot better off. But
can I bring you back on another day for that one? Can I?
For sure. Yep.
Listen, Carly, do you know what? This, I think, is probably the longest chat that I have had on, because your story is, I like, it's there now. It's stay on the page, and I know it is going to help so many, particularly this year that we have, the year we've just come through, and the year we're heading to, by the looks of things as well. So, I mean, I can't thank you enough. We will get to see each other at some point,
some stage,
properly,
we will.
with the kids. Yes, I know. And look, thanks so much for coming on. And to those of you that stayed, watched and viewed and enjoyed, do post your comments and let us know. And if you need, look, just drop me a line here at Well Expo if you're in Dublin or whatever, and you just kind of want to know what routes to go or whatever. Please do drop a line. And don't forget too, and it's pinned to the top of my Facebook page, sign up for the newsletter, because what I'll do is actually I might drop in on the newsletter goes out on Sunday night. So what I might do is drop in some links for various resources for education and for accessing, because now is the time to actually apply if you're thinking of going back in September, even if it is a level 5 and you're starting at level 5 like Carly did, and just doing it gently in your own time. That way I'll drop in some links into the newsletter and you can click through to the ETBs and whatnot. Carly, thank you so much for coming on, and I shall chat to you soon.
Absolutely.
See you.
Nice to see you.